Hello. Before I get started on my video on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, I want to give you some background about me and why I'm qualified to talk about the murder of John F. Kennedy in 1963. I have read about 20 books on the assassination. I've also cross-referenced about another 30 looking strictly at footnotes and on the research that those books were based upon. I have seen all the major movies on the JFK assassination, including made-for-TV films. I have seen close to 100 documentaries on the assassination, or close to that, in the roughly 35 years that I've been researching this assassination. I went to Dealey Plaza in 1993, and I've seen where Kennedy was killed, and I even did research there. I met Dr. Jim Fetzer, a leading researcher on the assassination and the Zapruder film, in 2009. So I know a lot about the assassination. Now, I realize I can't put everything into this video. The JFK assassination goes into a lot of different things. So there's going to be a big description on both of these videos about the JFK murder online. That will include anything and everything about this and really all my sources. The video is really giving you the major evidence of the murder that I believe proves conspiracy at a 100% level. My next video is going to be on odd things that are connected to the JFK assassination. It's a shorter video, it's quite a bit shorter than this. I'm also planning on doing more videos on the JFK assassination and possibly other videos on other major famous assassinations in American history. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to start at the beginning with the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission was created in 1964 by President LBJ. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. It was nothing more than a rubber stamp of an FBI report by J. Edgar Hoover. It was a complete fraud. It was a hoax on the American taxpayer. They got nothing right about JFK's murder. It was loaded with government people, the far right of the day, such as Allen Dulles, who was the head of the CIA until JFK fired him in 1962, I believe. And Gerald Ford was on there, who was also very pro-CIA. John J. McCloy was on there, who was a former banker and was also pro-establishment and pro-CIA. It was very, very biased, in other words. The magic bullets are not real. There's no way gunfire works like that. The magic bullet theory is a farce. It's a fraud. One bullet cannot cause that many wounds in many different people. It supposedly caused almost 10 wounds in several different people according to the Warren report. It's simply not reality. There were independent studies in the 90s that pretty much proved Oswald could not have done the shooting the way the Warren Commission said he did. Okay, the government will not release a lot of CIA files on Lee Harvey Oswald. Why? Well, I'm going to get to some of that later in this video. There's anywhere from 100 to 1,000 pages of information based on my research of the CIA on Oswald that they will not release to the public. There's in the CIA Walk of Fame in Langley, Virginia, Lee Harvey Oswald's name is on a brick there. And the CIA will not comment on why his name is being honored there. Why would you honor the supposed murderer of John F. Kennedy? Makes no sense. That's a lot of the reason this was a conspiracy. I believe he was in the fake defector program, and so do a lot of other researchers, meaning he was not a real communist. He went to Russia as a right-wing CIA man to spy on Russia, and I believe spy on their economic system and their governmental system. According to Jim Fetzer, there's an Altgens photo of Oswald in front of the depository during the time of the shooting. The photo has Lee Harvey Oswald's clothing in it. Jim Fetzer thinks the photo was rigged to look like somebody else. According to the Warren report, it was Billy Nolan Lovelady. He claims he did not dress like that day. That photo alone could exonerate Lee Harvey Oswald if we ever actually saw the real photo. It's possible. That's just one piece of major evidence that could exonerate him. I'm going to move on now to the massive photographic evidence in Dealey Plaza. The evidence suggests a massive CIA plot. There's massive photographic evidence in Dealey Plaza. I would encourage you to look at the site Familiar Faces in Dealey.com or in DealeyPlaza.com by Jim Fetzer. It has all the photographs in Dealey there. There were photos of George H.W. Bush there that day, with or without General Lansdale, Edward Lansdale, who was in the CIA, E. Howard Hunt, Frank Sturgis, J.D. Tippit, which I think is Badgeman. I'll get to that later in the video. Eugene Hal Brading, the three tramps of Charles Rogers, Chauncey Holt, and Charles V. Harrelson. Fake cops, J.A. Miltier, a famous right-winger and FBI informant, Lucienne Conine, who was in the old French Connection, and Jerry Patrick Hemming, who was also in the CIA, were all filmed there that day. If this was not a conspiracy, why were all these men that were mostly connected to the CIA there? A few of them were connected to the mob or organized crime globally or in the US. Okay, now I'm going to go on to shooter positions. I believe Malcolm Wallace shot from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, not Oswald. He was a murderer, an assassin, and a crony for LBJ. He was murdered in 1970 when he tried to blackmail the conspirators in LBJ for more money. They got rid of him because he wanted more money. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the Dale Tex building assassins. I believe Tony Esquerdo fired from the CIA broom closet in that building behind Kennedy. There was a CIA front business in that building. It was a mining company. I believe G. Gordon Liddy and George H.W. Bush were spotters in that building, as proven by the Altgens photo and the Dale Tex hit team photo. They're all on the internet and on that site. Tony was a CIA anti-Castro Cuban. He died under an odd scenario in another nation. Okay, Harry Weatherford, I believe, fired from the county jail, either on top of the building or in the building. He was a dirty Dallas cop who was connected to the CIA. He was a right-winger who hated JFK. He admitted with a comment to a journalist in the 1970s that he had done it, or at least it could be interpreted that way. I think he may have been in it strictly for the money, like many of them were. Charles V. Harrelson, I believe, fired from the county records building. He's the father of actor Woody. He was one of the three tramps. He was heavily connected to the underworld, and he was convicted in Dallas in 1987 for killing a district judge there from an office building with a high-powered rifle. Sound familiar? Yes. He killed Judge Wood in 1987 in Texas. He got a life sentence. He maintained till his death in 2007 that he had nothing to do with the JFK assassination. We know otherwise based on photographic evidence, which is a key. Grassy Knoll, I believe Badgeman who fired from the knoll who may have missed was J.D. Tippit. In the Mormon photo, Badgeman could be identified as the cop J.D. Tippit. He was there with an unidentified electrical worker dressed in orange who I think could have been Johnny Roselli, who was in the mob. You can tell it's a cop firing. J.D. was a right-winger who hated Kennedy. He was a member of the local John Birch Society. He was strictly in it for the money. He came in late because he had a non-marital kid from an affair and needed money. John Roselli, I think, fired from the drain to the right underneath the motorcade. It was to the right of the motorcade underneath the road. He supposedly admitted it. It could have been Lucien Sarti, who was connected to the Corsican mob or the French Connection. It's possible, but I believe it was Roselli. I'm going to talk about him a little bit later. He was heavily connected to the CIA and the mob. Frank Sturgis, I believe, fired from the drain along the overpass. Jack Ruby was a spotter up there that day. He was seen by several witnesses by the knoll before the murder. One was Julianne Mercer. Her signature was forged by the FBI. She saw him up there, Jack Ruby, before the assassination. I believe Sturgis fired through the windshield. He probably killed JFK. He was an extreme right-winger who was in the CIA. He was heavily involved with the murder plots against Castro and other leaders globally. He was a Watergate burglar who was tied to Nixon. He hated JFK. He admitted it. I heard on a radio show in 1992, when I was in high school, that he claimed during the 92 presidential campaign that George H.W. Bush had been involved in the murder of Kennedy and would not admit it and was trying to cover up for fear of retaliation. He wrote novels about his exploits in the CIA like E. Howard Hunt did. One of his novels was fiction, technically it was fiction, called Bimini Run. There were many CIA plants all over Dealey Plaza that day. Bernard Barker had fake Secret Service credentials behind the knoll to wall off the area. He was a Watergate burglar that was also a contract agent with the agency, just like Hunt. A lot of them were connected to the agency and Watergate and Nixon. There were possibly other hit squads all over Dealey that day that were not used. It was a highly sophisticated gun plot in a highly sophisticated conspiracy. I'm going to move on now to the murder of tons of witnesses within a few years of the murder. There was something like 100 to 200 key people that were killed that were witnesses of this event or were connected to this event. The odds are crazy that this could be a coincidence. I'm going to mention about 5 biggies that very much prove conspiracy. One was Lee Bowers, who was the railroad worker who saw shots on the knoll. He was killed in an odd car wreck within 1 year of the assassination. He did TV interviews about it. Dorothy Kilgallen, a famous TV personality and journalist, threatened to expose the nexus of Oswald and Ruby. She claimed to blow the lid off the whole thing. She died in an odd murder scenario